Okie dokie, artichoke. We're gonna get started with some Photoshop stuff. So the first thing we need to do is get to Photoshop. So there's a few different ways for y'all to get there. Ideally, you'd already have it saved at the bottom. Don't judge me about my my desktop. I know I got crap all over the place. It is what it is. Okay. So if you have a little launch pad in the corner, you can click on that and scroll through. Boom, Photoshop CC 2019. You can drag that down, let it go, and theoretically it should save down there. It seems like lately it kind of disappears every once in a while, and so, you know, not the end of the world. So you can go to it this way, open it up there. If you don't, for some reason, have all this fancy stuff at the bottom, you can go up to Macintosh HD, double click there, Applications, find Photoshop, it's the PS, and then you're going to click on the square, the one that actually looks like the PS of Adobe Photoshop, Delio. Okay, let it bounce and wait patiently. Waiting for it. All right, so obviously these are some of the things that I've done in the past, and so it's just kind of up there. So what you're going to do, and for you it's probably going to show up a little bit different because you don't have any projects in here yet. You can hit Create New, and the new document image will pop up. And so what you're seeing here is how you actually set up your document. This is where you can title stuff, you know, and set everything up exactly how you want it. For me, like I said, we're going to do inches. Like I said, for me, that's just easier to kind of wrap my brain around. Your document that you're going to use is going to be 400. Oh, I lied, not 400. It's going to be 4 by 4. So a 4 by 4 square with a resolution of 300. Kind of talked about this before, but let's just talk about resolution stuff again. It's definitely even more, it's 1,000 times more important in Photoshop than it was in Illustrator, because in Photoshop we're dealing with pixels, right? So this is literally how many little squares or pixels there are per inch. So if we were doing stuff for the internet, right? So if I was going to put stuff literally just on the internet, you can do it at 72. Okay. If I was going to do something for like a magazine, I'd maybe do, magazines usually print out at like 150, and then photos and above are usually about 300. Okay. So you just kind of double it each time. So some of the questions like, well, why wouldn't I just do like it at 5,000, right? Because your file size would be huge. It would actually be ridiculously large. And it would take forever to load, and it's just really unnecessary. So 300, that's where we're kind of going to be going for now. We can do RGB, which is great. Background color white, perfect. And we can hit create. So what we're left with is a big square in the center. One of the first thing I'm going to do is actually just bring in an image, this image is honestly, I'm just kind of bringing, this is what I am going to work on, honestly, but I'm just kind of bringing it in right now just so I can kind of walk you through what some of these different things are and all that kind of exciting stuff. All right, so this first video is just kind of like a walkthrough of Photoshop. So I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to hit Place. So Place is either linked or embedded. Linked would be that like I have a file somewhere else that I'm working on and it's not actually putting it in Photoshop. It's actually like in a different place, and every time I open it, it links it and brings it in. For our purposes, we actually want to embed it because we want to have it saved essentially in this file. So I'm going to put Place Embedded. And it's going to ask me where it is. So I'm going to go to Desktop, and I'm not going to lie to you, I don't remember what it's called. And so what I can do is go to show icons instead. So that way I can kind of scroll through and find the picture that I'm looking for. See, where is it? Oh, boom, it's right here. So I'm going to hit Place. And hopefully it works. Thanks for being patient. Cool. You're right, she is adorable. Okay. And so you notice right away, depending on your image, I know my image is like a higher resolution image, and so it's going to kind of constrain it to this box. And so, but I know that I actually want it bigger than that. So I'm going to drag it. So unlike Illustrator, you don't have to hold down Shift for it to keep the constraints on that image. If you hold down Shift in Photoshop, that's how you get it kind of wonky. Okay, so I'm going to let go of Shift and it kind of goes back to the constraint. So a couple of things right away when we're looking at this. We have our toolbar, right? Just like we did in Illustrator. So you notice a lot of the stuff is actually set up pretty big picture similar to Illustrator, but they're totally different programs, right? So if I zoom in on a picture, right? If I zoom in, you can see these are all just pixels, right? Little tiny squares. Okay, as I zoom out, right, we see the whole image. Remember, that's 300 pixels per inch. So for every inch, there's 300 pixels, right? That's what that means. PPI. What else is there I want to talk about? Basically, the way Photoshop is set up is it's set up in different color layers. Okay, so they're called channels. So if I click on this, right, so that's my red and green channel together, green and blue, right? If I just have my red channel pulled up, right? So each one of these are the different color channels. It looks black and white, but it's actually, this is what my blue layer would look like, right? Paths, we'll talk about that later. So these are all windows, right? Just like they were in Illustrator. Our windows are here. If you are trying to look for something and you can't find it, this is where you're going to find it, right? So if I'm going to say, pull up your brushes window, or click on your brushes, and you can't see it in this little toolbar here, you can always go to Windows. Pretty much any of this stuff up here is, if you kind of think logically about it, that's where you're going to find stuff, right? So like, oh man, Nelson, I want to see my rulers. Well, you want to view your rulers, right? So you can come down, rulers, boom. So now we can actually see that this is 4 inches wide. 3D, there's a whole thing about 3D, which we're actually not even going to touch on, but you can do some kind of neat stuff where you can do mock-ups of boxes and that kind of stuff. Filters, you can do a lot of kind of crazy stuff with filters. So if we make a selection, let's go like pixelate, I don't know, what do we want to do? Noise, distort, so we'll do a zigzag. All right, so if I zoom out, you can kind of see with the rough. Oh, it makes me sad. Right, and I can actually change my ridges, how high the ridges, and so this is what a pond ripple would look like out from center. Right, so there's lots of different things, and we're barely going to touch. I mean, sometimes filters are really great if you use them in the right way. Otherwise, sometimes they can be super hokey. Selection stuff. So let's say that I made a selection using, we'll talk about the different selections actually. We might as well do that right now. So we have just our straight up shape selection. So rectangle, circle, single, pixel lines, that kind of stuff. So I can make a selection with there. Hit delete, it goes away. You notice one thing over here, which I kind of didn't even talk about, was that I actually there's two layers of the exact same thing. The reason why I did that is because I want to work non-destructively. So what that means is that I don't want to destroy my image, right? This is something that I might need later, or if I mess something up, I can always come back and get back to it. Okay, so this is non-destructively. So what I do is that if I want to make a copy of it, I literally just drag that down to my little piece of paper, let go, now I have a copy of it. Okay, or if I want to get rid of a layer, drag it down to the garbage, just let it go. So for my copy, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock it. So click on the little lock, click on the little eyeball, because I don't want to see it. That's just my backup copy. Okay. More selection options. We have a lasso tool. So literally I can just click, drag around something, make that selection. Boom. All right. And so you can see it's quick. You can do a lot of really, simple things with it, but it's not always the most accurate. And if I accidentally, oh no, now it totally went away, right? And so some more precise options, we'll just stick in here real quick. So we have the polygon lasso tool, which means basically just straight edges. So if I do a lot of little clicks, I can kind of get kind of accurate, but I'm still going to end up with really straight edges the whole time, which can be really great for some things, but if I'm doing more of an organic shape like a human, it's maybe not the best option. Okay, and also you notice it stays as selection. You actually have to go back to where you started. And if you look, there's a little circle around it. That means, oh, you're closing that shape. You're closing that selection. So now it turns into a selection. So I'm hitting Command D to deselect. And then we also have our magnetic lasso tool, which is definitely a lot more accurate. If I go slow, it kind of magnetizes itself to the shapes that I'm trying to go around. Once again, you can see it works pretty well if you go slow, but it's definitely not perfect. Command D. And then we can kind of go down to our quick selection tool, which I think works a lot better as a good starting point. So I can add stuff. Oh no, I got too much. If I hold down Alt, you can see it turns into a minus. Then I can kind of go back around and subtract some stuff. Right? So obviously a little bit more accurate. Still, if I'm doing this for real, it's a good starting out point, but I would actually use other tools to refine it, which we'll talk about later. So let's go back up into our stuff here. So like selection tool, right? So I just made a selection. If I wanted to mess around with some of those things, I could go up into my selection tool. I can hit inverse. So now the opposite's selected. Right? So I'd cut her out. Or if I want to modify that, so with border, feather, any of that grow, any of that kind of stuff. Type, so this is literally how you use your characters, that kind of stuff. Layers, so that's, once again, this is our layers panel here. Once again, just like Illustrator, whatever's on top, that's what we see. What's below it, right? Our white, we can't see it because there's stuff on top of it. Our layers, we can make masks, we can fill layers, we can rename layers, we can copy, hide. Any things that you're like, how do I do this with my layers? You can always go up to layers. Image, I can make adjustments this way. I can do toning, duplicate, apply image, analysis, set measurement scale. All that kind of stuff is through here. You can change the mode, which we'll get into a little bit, not too much. Honestly, for my adjustments, there's sometimes I would use these, but I would actually use my adjustments here 1,000 times more than I ever use these here. And we'll talk about that later too. Edit, fill, stroke, define brush sets, right? Edit, file. So this is like when I'm saving, exporting, that kind of stuff. Photoshop, and this is where I'm doing my preferences, all those kinds of things. So if you think logically-ish about what you need, what you're trying to find, what you're trying to do, you can kind of find that stuff here. One thing I didn't really mention either is that anytime when I'm switching tools, so these different tools here, you notice this changes up here. So this is essentially my options for these tools. So let's go into another tool that I didn't show you with selections, which is called the Magic Wand. It's called the Magic Wand because what it does is it actually magically selects a range, or what they call is a tolerance. All right, so if I do a low tolerance, right, so I'm going up to this panel here, changing stuff, it'll only pick one little pixel. If I do like 50, right, you can see it'll take a wider range. So if you're trying to pick a very specific color, this is a really good way to kind of do that, okay? this is, like I said, we're barely touching on this stuff, but this is kind of your first quick intro to this. Next, we'll kind of talk about, we're going to get a little deeper into our first project.